The night enveloped our small village in a cloak of darkness, the moon casting eerie shadows across the familiar streets. I stood at the edge of our farmhouse, gazing out into the inky blackness, a strange restlessness stirring within me. It was a warm summer's night, the air heavy with the scent of earth and growing things, but despite the peacefulness of the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over me like a heavy fog. I had spent my entire life in this sleepy corner of the world, surrounded by fields of golden wheat and rolling hills that stretched out as far as the eye could see. Life here was simple and predictable, governed by the rhythm of the seasons and the cycle of planting and harvest. But tonight, something felt different, as if the very air crackled with an unseen energy, waiting to be unleashed. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, a sudden pang of thirst jolted me back to the present. With a sigh, I glanced towards the kitchen window, where the dim glow of a lamp spilled out onto the porch. My parents had long since retired for the night, their weary bodies seeking solace in the embrace of sleep. But I knew that I couldn't rest until my thirst was quenched. With a sense of purpose, I made my way across the yard towards the well, its weathered stones standing silent sentinel against the backdrop of the night. The path was familiar to me, worn smooth by years of use, yet tonight it seemed to stretch out before me like an endless journey into the unknown. As I reached the well, I paused for a moment, listening to the creak of the old wooden pulley as it swayed gently in the breeze. The sound echoed in the stillness of the night, a solitary note in the symphony of silence that surrounded me. With a steady hand, I reached out to grasp the frayed rope, my fingers closing around it with a sense of determination. Drawing a deep breath, I began to lower the bucket into the darkness below, the rhythmic clank of the metal against stone filling the night air. Each descent seemed to take an eternity, the darkness swallowing the bucket whole as it disappeared into the depths below. Yet despite the sense of foreboding that gnawed at my insides, I pressed on, driven by a thirst that seemed to consume me from within. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the bucket reached the water below, the sound of its descent echoing up from the depths like a distant echo. With a sense of relief, I began to draw it back up, my muscles straining against the weight of the water as it sloshed and swirled within the confines of the wooden pail. But as the bucket broke the surface, my heart sank. Instead of the clear, cool water I had expected, it came up empty, save for a few drops of dark, murky liquid that clung to the sides like oil. Confusion clouded my thoughts as I stared down into the depths, wondering what could have gone wrong. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence, a whisper so faint I could barely make out the words. "Beware," it murmured, sending a shiver down my spine. "The well holds secrets far older and darker than you can imagine. Turn back now, before it's too late." I recoiled in shock, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Who or what could be speaking to me from the depths of the well? And what secrets did it hold that could inspire such fear? With trembling hands, I began to wind the rope back up, my mind racing with questions and uncertainty. But as the bucket broke the surface, I hesitated, a sense of dread settling over me like a heavy blanket. Something was terribly wrong, and I had a sinking feeling that I was about to find out exactly what it was. Disregarding the elder's warning, I grasped the bucket and hoisted it from the depths of the well. The water, murky and foul-smelling, sloshed ominously as I lifted it, sending ripples across its surface. A sense of unease settled over me, like a dark cloud looming on the horizon. Turning back towards the farmhouse, I felt a chill wind whip through the night, carrying with it a whisper of voices that seemed to swirl around me. Goosebumps erupted along my arms as I hastened my steps, a prickling sensation of being watched urging me onward. The path homeward stretched out before me, the darkness closing in like a suffocating blanket. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of the night pressing down upon me. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft crunch of gravel beneath my boots. With each passing moment, the sense of dread grew stronger, a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. I quickened my pace, desperate to escape the oppressive stillness that surrounded me. Finally, the farmhouse came into view, its warm glow a beacon of safety in the darkness. Relief flooded through me as I pushed open the door and stepped inside, the familiar scent of home washing over me like a comforting embrace. But even as I closed the door behind me, a sense of foreboding lingered, casting a shadow over the safety of the farmhouse. The air seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, a feeling of unease that settled deep within my bones. Moving through the darkness, I made my way to the kitchen, the dim light of the lamp casting long shadows across the room. My parents were nowhere to be seen, their absence adding to the sense of isolation that hung heavy in the air. Pouring the water into a glass, I hesitated for a moment, the liquid dark and murky in the dim light. But thirst won out over fear, and I took a tentative sip, the taste bitter on my tongue. As I set the glass down, a sudden noise broke the silence, a soft thud echoing through the darkness. My heart leaped into my throat, adrenaline flooding my veins as I strained to listen for any sign of movement. But the house remained silent, the only sound the pounding of my own heart. With a shaky breath, I forced myself to calm down, chiding myself for letting my imagination run wild. Yet despite my efforts, a sense of unease lingered, a feeling that something was terribly wrong, and as I sat alone in the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Fear gripped me like icy fingers as I stared into the yawning darkness of the well. The laughter seemed to mock me, taunting me with its malevolent presence. I knew I should turn and flee, to put as much distance between myself and that cursed place as possible. But something held me rooted to the spot, a morbid curiosity that compelled me to stay and face whatever horrors awaited me. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I leaned closer to the well, straining to catch any sound that might betray the presence of whatever lurked within. For a moment, there was nothing but the oppressive silence of the forest, broken only by the rustling of leaves in the breeze. But then, just as I was about to give up hope, I heard the faintest whisper of movement from below. My heart leaped into my throat as I listened, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. It was as if the very air itself was alive with the presence of some unseen entity, its malevolence palpable even from a distance. With trembling hands, I reached for the rope once more, the urge to uncover the truth outweighing my fear. I knew I had to descend into the darkness, to confront whatever lay hidden in the depths below. Summoning all my courage, I began to lower myself into the well, the walls closing in around me like the jaws of some great beast. The air grew colder with each passing moment, sending shivers down my spine. As I descended deeper into the abyss, the darkness seemed to envelop me, swallowing me whole. I could barely see my own hand in front of my face, the inky blackness pressing in from all sides. But still, I pressed on, driven by a desperate need to uncover the truth. And then, just when I thought I couldn't go any further, my feet touched solid ground. I stood at the bottom of the well, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The darkness seemed to press down on me, suffocating me with its oppressive weight. And then, suddenly, I heard the sound of laughter echoing through the darkness, louder and more menacing than before. It seemed to come from all around me, filling the cavernous space with its chilling presence. I knew then that I was not alone, that whatever dwelled in the depths of the well was watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With a sense of growing dread, I turned to face the darkness, my mind racing with 1,000 terrifying possibilities. And then, just as I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me from the shadows. Panic surged through me, threatening to overwhelm my senses. But I knew I couldn't give in to fear, not now. I had come too far to turn back, to let whatever evil lurked in the darkness win. Summoning all my strength, I stepped forward, determined to uncover the truth once and for all. Whatever awaited me in the darkness, I was ready to face it head-on. The glowing eyes watched me from the shadows, their eerie light piercing the darkness like beacons of malevolence. I could feel their gaze boring into me, stripping away my defenses and leaving me exposed. But I refused to let fear paralyze me. With a steady hand, I reached for the flashlight clipped to my belt, its reassuring weight a small comfort in the face of the unknown. With a click, the beam of light pierced the darkness, casting long, twisting shadows across the walls of the cavern. I held my breath, half afraid of what I might see and half desperate for answers. And then, there it was, a figure huddled in the corner of the cavern, its form shrouded in darkness. It seemed to cower away from the light, as if afraid of being seen. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached, the beam of the flashlight trembling in my hand. I could feel the weight of the creature's gaze upon me, its presence filling the cavern with a sense of dread. And then, with a suddenness that took my breath away, the figure moved a shuffling, awkward motion that seemed almost inhuman. I tensed, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. But then I saw it, the face of an old man, twisted with pain and fear. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, two strangers bound together by the darkness that surrounded us. And then, with a voice that was little more than a whisper, the old man spoke. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. "What do you want?" I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. The old man's eyes bore into mine, searching for some sign of understanding or compassion. I'm just looking for answers," I said at last, my voice barely audible above the pounding of my heart. I heard strange noises coming from the well, and I wanted to see for myself." The old man's eyes narrowed, his gaze piercing through me like a knife. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "This place is cursed, tainted by the sins of the past." I felt a chill run down my spine at his words, a sense of unease settling over me like a shroud. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. But the old man said nothing more, his gaze drifting back into the darkness. I knew then that I wouldn't get any more answers from him, that whatever secrets this place held would remain hidden in the shadows. With a heavy heart, I turned to leave, the weight of the old man's words hanging over me like a pall. I knew I should be grateful to escape with my life, but part of me couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving something important behind. As I climbed out of the well and made my way back to the surface, I couldn't help but feel that I had stumbled upon something far beyond my understanding, something ancient and malevolent that lurked just out of sight. And as I walked away from that cursed place, I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay hidden in the darkness, waiting to be discovered. Approaching the well, I felt my heart begin to race. Darkness enveloped it like a dense shroud, and I could see nothing but a dark blot in the distance. Lowering the bucket, I listened intently to the surrounding sounds. The wind whispered mysterious secrets, and my own footsteps sounded loud in the silent night. The water in the well seemed deep and endless, and I hesitated to touch it. But my thirst outweighed my fear, and I dared to take one final step. As I reached the bottom of the bucket, a strange noise suddenly emanated from the depths of the well. It was something unknown, something I had never heard before. My heart raced, and then I heard something else, something that made me freeze in terror.